planning to pass a new law which would open up new sectors for investment and ensure that foreign investors enjoy the same privileges as Chinese companies. So what is the impact and how big of a leap is this move in China's continued efforts to open up its markets? And a Christmas miracle couldn't save the U.S. government this week, as certain sectors remain shut down over the holidays. What's behind this latest government gridlock, and what's next? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you live from Beijing. I'm Li Qiuyuan, sitting in for Liu Xin. China's legislation body, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, or NPC, is considering a new law to govern foreign investment. The proposed law would ensure that foreign investors can enjoy the same privileges as Chinese companies. As a part of its efforts to open up the market, China will trim down the negative list, which clarifies the areas the government will regulate for domestic or foreign investors. The list cuts 177 items from an earlier pilot version and now includes 151 items. The new law also emphasizes the illegality of forced technology transfer, I should say. So how significant is this proposed law for foreign investors in China? And as China and the U.S. try to find a solution to the trade dispute, how will the new law fit into the ongoing trade talks? Joining me here in the Beijing studio are Ms. Zhao Miao, partner at the Beijing NG Law Firm, and Mr. Andy Mock, a non-resident fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. And also from New Jersey, Mr. Jack Perkowski, founder and managing partner of JFP Holdings Ltd., a merchant banking firm focused on China, and also the author of Managing the Dragon, How I'm Building a Billion-Dollar Business in China. Welcome to you all. So let me start with you, Andy. The drafted law on foreign investment has been submitted to the NPC Standing Committee, as we mentioned, and once adopted, this law will replace the existing 3 laws. What do you see as the major differences or major progress here?
Well, I think the big issue here is just an overall streamlining and a more efficient reform of the bureaucratic apparatus in China. At any time, I think we can make things simpler, faster, whether for domestic stakeholders or foreign stakeholders. It's always a positive. So I think back to the days of Zhu Rongji, when he was known as one-chop Zhu, making things much simpler for foreign businesses. So overall, I think this is a very encouraging sign.
And your thoughts on this, Ms. Zhao?
It is a timely change, actually, based on the recent kind of tension between the United States and China. And also, if you look at the laws being replaced by this proposed new law, those are being in force for quite a long time, like 20 years by now. So it's time to actually update those laws and actually put a more transparent and also universal form of the regulations and also the rules for the foreign investment in China.
There are several terms on that statement we want to clarify. It says, among other mechanisms, the pre-establishment national treatment and negative list management have been written to the draft law. Explain to us, Ms. Zhao, what is the pre-establishment national treatment and why do you think it's necessary?
Well, this pre-establishment actually is a concept versus after permission or after establishment. Actually, right now it is that kind of the most favorable kind of, foreign investment laws in the world, one of the most advanced regimes there. And then in terms of the national treatment, previously I would say earlier actually in terms of the tax regime, all the foreign investment firms, they actually enjoy a more favorable treatment, other than now we are calling this, nation the nation treatment. So now it's like the tax regime, the different tax regimes are no longer in place. Now we're talking about kind of pre-approval authorization kind of process. Now it seems that we are further loosening up on all kind of controls in terms of foreign investments.
Now, Mr. Perkowski in New Jersey, let me bring you in on this. The negative list for market access outlines sectors, fields, and businesses that are off limits for investors, and the list now includes 151 items, as we mentioned, cutting as many as 177 items, or 54% compared with the previous pilot version we've been seeing in Shanghai, in Tianjin, Fujian, and Guangzhou. So industries, fields, and businesses not on that list are open for investment to all market players. How big of a step is this, do you think, for China in further opening up its markets?
No, I think it's a big step, and this is a continuation, really of a trend over the last 20, 30 years. When I first came to China in 1993, the only industry in which foreign companies or foreign investors could have majority ownership was automotive components. So basically the negative list was essentially everything was on the negative list, if you will, except for automotive components. Over the years, the number of industries and sectors where foreign investors could have majority, have 100% ownership has been increased. And so this is a continuation of that. The big sectors that are affected, I think, that will have the biggest long-lasting impact is the whole financial sector, which is now step by step being opened up to wholly owned foreign ownership.
Now, Ms. Zhao here, talk to us about, is it a common practice for countries to take a negative list approach regarding foreign investment?
I read about some statistics. It is said that about 70 countries now, we are actually joining a team of 70 countries. So I don't know whether it's a majority or it's at least one of the leading states who's taking this approach.
So
maybe if I could jump in for a second here. I think that's a great point, but also what's interesting is that the two largest economies in the world, the United States and China, the United States long has taken a negative approach on investment into the United States, with only, I think the two major areas are nuclear energy and domestic aviation that are on the negative list. And one of the big sticking points between U.S. China, and we have to remember it's not just a trade conflict, but a trade and an investment conflict, because at least from the Trump administration's perspective, the feeling from the U.S. is that China does not play fairly. And with President Xi's statement that China's doors open and will only continue to be more open, I think that this move is a very, very positive signal, in that moving from a positive list to a negative list is, I think, an important symbolic milestone.
So, Mr. Prochaska, let me get your take on this. Your reaction to what's been said here. Do you agree with what Andy has said, that this may quell some of the concerns from the U.S. or EU?
Yes, I agree with what's been said, and I think it's a very, very positive step, that's being taken or has been taken. I mean, basically, it kind of impacts a couple of issues. It also, to the extent that a foreign company can have its wholly owned business in China, that kind of takes away some of the impact of forced or coerced technology transfer and so forth. So it has in addition to opening up the market, it tends to make a lot of the other issues that have been, or concerns that have been expressed by the Trump administration, it takes a lot of those concerns and makes them less of an issue.
And Mr. Prochaska, if you take a look at the negative list, according to that document, of the 151 sectors, 4 are totally prohibited for both domestic and foreign investors, and the rest require government approval. The prohibited areas now include illegal financing and unlawful internet activities. So finance and internet-related business got a big mention. And areas that require approval also include mining, agriculture, manufacturing. So my question to you is, do you think China should open up even more sectors for foreign investment? In which areas specifically? Do you think that this list should be even shorter than this?
Well, the biggest area that now is closed to foreign investment is the whole telecommunications area, and you can understand, why a country, including China, might consider that, to be a sensitive industry and so forth. The other sectors that are on there are things like prohibitions on owning operations that are involved in the mining of tungsten and so forth. So I think the things that remain off limits to foreign investors, other than large industries like telecommunications, are really fairly narrow segments of the marketplace. As I mentioned earlier, the big one that's opening up is the financial area. This includes banks, insurance companies, and so forth. I mean, China has $28 trillion of bank deposits, and recirculating that capital is one of the key growth drivers, I believe, in the future. And to the extent that China reforms the financial sector and opens it up, basically that will help to do that. That's why I think that's going to be the longest lasting change that's that's been made.
And the draft also underlines protection of intellectual property rights of foreign investors and foreign companies and encourage voluntary technological cooperation based on business rules. It said conditions of technological cooperation concerning foreign investment should be decided by all parties of investment through negotiation, while government departments and officials cannot use administrative means for forced technology. My question goes to Andy this time. First of all, the U.S. and EU have been accusing China of forced technology transfer for a long time. Also, China failing to protect the intellectual property right of foreign firms operating here in the country. Do you think that this new law is a reaction to those accusations?
I'm not sure that it is, because I think, first of all, President Xi made a great point that, China reforms because it's in the best interest of China, and it's not responding to pressure or bullying from any other country. That being said, I think the first point about forced technology transfer is that it's a little bit of a red herring in that it's a condition, it's a business negotiation. So companies choose to agree to it or not. I think in terms of intellectual property protection, China's made tremendous advances in this area and will only continue to get better.
Now, China and the U.S. are currently attempting to negotiate an agreement to their trade war, and some say that Beijing's move signal its increased support for its economy as trade war has dragged down growth. Do you agree that Washington's pressure on Beijing is working, Ms. Zhao?
Well, I would be very conservative in agreeing with that analysis. Actually, if you look at some of the proposals from this published draft or proposed draft, it was there for quite a long time. Actually, some of them were there for like months. Some of them were from middle of this year. So it wasn't quite necessarily a consequence or result for the trade pressure from the United States. But that being said, I also agree with Jack analysis there.
All right. So that's all the time we have for this discussion here. Thank you very much, Mr. Jack Burkowski, joining us from New Jersey, and Ms. Zhao Miao, and also Andy Mock joining me in the studio. Thank you so much. Let's take a short break on The Point. We'll be right back.